What is good, everybody? Welcome back to Blerd Out. We got the new One Piece chapter today. 1119 is out. It's an interesting chapter. I got some thoughts on it. We're going to talk about it. I've also got some time today to talk about some of the other stuff I've been wanting to hit for a little bit now, namely My Hero ending in I think it's 4 chapters now, and then how JJK is going, both in the manga. So we got some cool stuff today. As always, a word from our sponsors. Thank you for tuning in to Blerd Out. Whether you're listening from YouTube on my channels like Taran King Kuma or Blerd Out Podcast, or one of the many podcast sites like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more, I appreciate your support. If you want to listen to older episodes of that podcast, head on over to Patreon. If you join as a free member, you can watch all the old episodes from the old seasons for free. Plus, there'll be other content that didn't quite make it to an episode or on a YouTube video that you can check out there as well. Your support means the world. And if you have not caught up to the latest chapters episodes, please note there will be spoilers ahead.
Oops. Spoilers.
Okay, so first things first, 1119. An interesting chapter for me. Honestly, this chapter felt... Oda tends to bounce around certain topics when he has a lot he wants to do in a chapter. So it'll feel like we're here one moment, then jumping here the next moment, then jumping over there the next moment, all in one chapter. And generally that flows pretty well. There are some times where it feels like it's overwhelming, but generally that flows pretty well. This chapter felt like we were doing that, like we were jumping around to different things, or just a lot was happening. But, you know, I went over it a couple times. We're really not going a lot of places. This chapter mainly takes place on the shore of the giant ship. Like I would say 70% of this chapter takes place in that one area. So it's not like we're bouncing around as much as it just feels like there's a lot happening in this one spot. And it's, I don't know, it's not cluttered. It just feels like a lot, I guess. And it doesn't feel as cohesive as it normally does. Like it doesn't have that, I don't know, it's missing something. I think that's the best way I can describe it. But let's get into it a little bit. The cover story is Yamato is still traveling. Yamato is currently getting pelted by stones from kids who resent Kaido, which makes sense. You are basically the child of this dictator that's been ruining the land for 20 years. People are kind of going to hate you. Now, I'm surprised that people know immediately who Yamato is, considering Yamato's been stuck in Onigashima basically since Odin was killed. So like how these kids know who Yamato is, I honestly have no idea. You can infer based on like the horns, maybe, but that's like a wild guess. You see somebody with horns and you're like, oh snap, that's Kaido's kid. So I don't know. I do like the idea of the kids not really responding to Yamato well because of Kaido, but I just feel like they wouldn't be the ones who resent Yamato as much as maybe adults or people who know firsthand about Kaido and all his stuff. Into the chapter, we start with Kaku and Stussy, and it's not what I thought, to be honest. It is and it isn't, because I said that Kaku would feel some kind of way about Stussy and would see her as someone he wants to keep around. But I also said that Kaku would believe Lucci would be fine. And here, Kaku's like, no, you have to go because Lucci is not going to take any of this. If he shows up and you're still here, he's taking you out. Which I think, I don't know, I still don't necessarily agree with that. I feel like from what we saw with Lucci, that might not be the case. But the big thing here is that Lucci and Kaku have been through a lot more together than Lucci and Stussy. So he might not have that same feeling towards Stussy as he does Kaku. Kaku clearly doesn't like doing this. Like, he obviously wants to keep Stussy around, and he's saying this for Stussy's sake, because he's like, if you stay here, I can't guarantee that you're going to be safe. I would like to see a dialogue between the three. I would even go as far as to say I would like Kaku to step in if Lucci does try to hurt Stussy, because you can see how much this hurts him. And I think this is one of the main reasons, I should say, why Kaku is my favorite of like the CP characters, because he feels so, I don't know, fleshed out as a character. Like, Lucci is very much, I got a job, I'm gonna do it. I'm the tough, crazy talking, I'm gonna get my job done, you gonna sit there, you gonna let me do it type deal. Where Kaku has always been more human, I want to say. He feels more like just a person, with feelings, who is doing this really crappy job that he doesn't want to do, but that's all he knows how to do. So it's like he's got nowhere else to go, he's got nothing else to do, he's got to do this, and he's got to make decisions like this even though they hurt him. So this is like the second time we've seen Kaku kind of just being put through it because of his job. And I hate to see him like this. I love to see the character being fleshed out more. Over to the giant ship, we have the Nikas. We have Luffy and we have Bonnie. I absolutely love Bonnie's Nika design. It feels very like happy, which I think is the essence of what Nika is supposed to be. Everyone recognizes him. The Marines see him, just like the Bonnie poster. The Giants are all calling for Nika. We have Mars analyzing it, and he sees that Bonnie made basically a clone of Nika. He doesn't seem to be too off-put by that. He's just like, all right, whatever, fire. Now, Luffy makes a comment of, nothing hurts these guys no matter how much they're sliced up or crushed. And I think it's important to kind of focus on that, because he is saying that superficially they take damage. It's just that they regenerate. So, because there's a feat further on down this chapter in which MF punches Mercury. I call him Mercury. He is Mercury, but I mean, I'm assuming that's essentially what he's supposed to be. They're all planets. He's Mercury. That makes the most sense. But he gets punched and his tusk breaks. Now, on first glance, you would think, okay, Luffy's been trying to punch Mercury for the longest now, hasn't been doing any damage. And here comes this giant, one swing, breaks a tusk. Now, we can take that as there's a specialty to the giant that allows him to do damage like that. But I think we need to see if Mercury regenerates from that. Because if we recall, I mean, Kuma came in and punched Saturn in the face, and Saturn was looking rough, but he just regenerated. So like, they take damage, you can damage them, but is it really doing anything? So if we see like in the next few chapters that Mercury actually took damage, then this becomes a good feat. But Luffy essentially goes a Gear 5 balloon, which is, we get the naming scheme down the road, but right now he's just in balloon mode. And he's tanking the fire, but he wants everyone to basically charge up the balloon so basically he can do what he did with Cracker. And from this we get Sanji, Frankie, and Bonnie punching him in the back. Now there's obviously some discourse about the moves used here, because we have Sanji using Ifrit Jambe, which is his highest class of moveset at this point. We have Frankie using Impeccable Strong, which I feel like, I don't think we get a really in-depth view of Frankie's naming conventions, but they feel very similar to Saitama's, where it's like, you know, normal punch, normal consecutive punches, and serious series. I think we have strong right and then impactful strong right. So I feel like that's how we're going with that. So it's a higher level of move, but it's still just strong right, you know, at the very end of the day. And then we have Bonnie using Giant Nico Punch, which is basically just a gear third, looks like an elephant gun. And Luffy notes that it hurts because that they're using hockey. And we can clearly see that Bonnie is using hockey. I think we can infer that Sanji is using hockey. Although I don't think they necessarily show it. I'm looking at the panel now and like the shading makes it kind of look like his leg is coated in hockey, but the rest of his body is shaded as well. So it's kind of weird. You know what, now I think about it, it's shaded. I don't know, that's weird. I think it's safe to assume Sanji's using hockey. The real question is Frankie. That's the one where I'm like, is he using any hockey? Now, there is no shading on any of Frankie's stuff. And when Luffy says, you know, you guys are using hockey, he's making a general statement. I don't think he meant literally everyone's using hockey. So it would be really cool if Frankie had some hockey feats. Doesn't seem like he does, but if he does get some at some point, I would love that. Luffy takes all that damage and basically uses it to reflect into Mars, sending him flying with booming dawn balloon. And this feels like a P2 moment. If you've ever seen Hunter x Hunter, where Netero sends P2 flying and then P2 stops basically the momentum and comes back. I feel like something like that's going to happen with Mars. I don't think he's straight up done for now. That or he has the speed to come back really quick. I don't think he's going to be away for as long as they expect him to be. Even though they said he won't be back anytime soon, I feel like he's going to be back soon. And they start setting sail. Now, the Sunny hasn't come down yet, which is interesting because they want to launch at the same time. And Frankie said that he would help the Sunny land when it comes down, but they haven't flown off yet. Atlas says she's going to go check, and she mentions to Lilith that they're being monitored. Now, I think with this, we're either pointing in two directions where the Vegapunks are going to decide not to go with us because they can be tracked and monitored, or they figure out to do what York does where they disconnect from the network. The problem is if they disconnect from the network, they lose access to Punk records. So it's like, which one do we value more? I personally would like to see them figure out a way to disconnect York from Punk records. That would be the most, I think, beneficial for everyone involved. Well, for our team, not everyone involved, obviously, but for our team is that York gets disconnected, Atlas and Lilith stay connected. I think if we do take one, and it'll probably be Lilith, there's a good chance that she could disconnect, and basically we have Lilith and we have the knowledge that she has, but we just don't have access to Punk records. We get a glimpse of the Iron Giant, who is standing up underwater at this point and back into moving mode. I do think that it's straight up like every time we get Gear 5, every time Nika's here, the Giant has power. That's the correlation. As long as Nika is out and about, the Giant is able to move. And we see the snail that's transporting the message. Now the message picks back up, and obviously we missed some parts. I don't know if we're gonna go back to those. I really hope we do. I hope one of the satellites for Vegapunk has the entire message so they can convey that. But we see that on the inside of the Giant, there's no water. So whatever the Giant's made out of, it's waterproof, but it's odd because it almost seems sentient. And by the end of the chapter, we have Joy Boy communicating with it as if it's a person. It's so odd. It's so odd. We get a few more reaction panels because when the message kicks back on, the video comes back on as well. So we get a spot of Whole Cake Island, and we see homeboy Katakuri. Now they show Katakuri at a part in which Vegapunk talks about inherited aspect, we can call it will. Now, initially, I was thinking Vegapunk is talking about Will of D, which he still might, because what he's saying, like, the message in entirety that we get from this chapter is that this inherited aspect that we may call will has caused suffering for people. And Vegapunk is saying, I can only pray that this message reached you for the suffering. Now, we really have to think about this. Is there suffering in the Will of D, or is there suffering in having something like Conqueror's Haki? Because if it's Conqueror's Haki, it would make sense to point out that, Katakuri being in the panels when that's being said, that correlation can be made. If it's the Will of D, I think it makes more sense story-wise, because from what Doflamingo said, basically the Will of D is constantly clashing with the Celestials, the ideas of the Celestials. So one could say it's a curse. You could say that they are cursed to go against the Celestials. And I think it can be cursed in like a metaphorical sense. I don't think it's an actual curse, but it's like if you are of the Will of D, if you have that name, you just in general clash against the Celestials. And I mean, you look at everyone who has had the Will of D so far, they've all clashed with what essentially the Celestials represent or are represented by. I mean, if you look at Saul, Garp, both Marines, they both work with the Marines, but they both resent, I guess, the deeper ideals of what the Marines do, what the world government wants the Marines to do. Garp straight up doesn't mess with the Celestials at all. He's just against it. And Saul, he was against hurting people for whatever this, convoluted idea of keeping history secret is. When Saul asked, like, Son Goku, why are we doing these kinds of things? Why are we locking up, why are we killing people just for learning? And Son Goku said, basically, don't question it. Saul was like, nah, I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with, harming these people for the sake of the world government without really knowing what's going on. And even then, it doesn't seem like a good reason to be hurting these people. And then you look at some of the other characters who just naturally pose, like you have Luffy, you have Dragon, you have Teach, you have Ace. None of them affiliated with any of the government or Marine standing. They all go against it because in general they're pirates. So it would make sense. I mean, I forgot about Law. Law also has that kind of a mentality. And Corazon said basically, just for having the D in your name, you're Doflamingo's enemy. And Doflamingo's a Celestial. So it's like there is an eternal struggle between, I think, the Will of D and the Celestials that Vegapunk is saying is being passed down as an aspect called will, but it might be something deeper than that. We also get a cool shot of Gaimon. We haven't seen him in a long time. Always cool to catch up with him. Jupiter. He's sucking again. That's his deal. He's sucking up a bunch of debris. He sucked up the CP agents. He sucked up the Seraphim, and he's just spitting them all at the ship, trying to get them to stop. Why? I don't. It's so weird because there's a panel where he sucks all the stuff up, he spits it at the ship. I would imagine he's trying to stop it, and then he looks over at the ship and he starts sucking the ship. Why didn't you start with that? Why would you just start spitting debris over there when you could just suck the ship up itself? Like, I don't understand that at all. But I think the only reason this happens is a plot device to get these Seraphim on the boat, because I think we're supposed to have a narrative where Bonnie and S-Bear interact. I think this, because I was actually wondering last chapter, I was like, oh, we're leaving, but Bonnie doesn't have, I thought Bonnie would take some form of Kuma besides Kuma himself. And I think that S-Bear is going to be that takeaway. I would have loved if she left with all the pacifistas, but I think S-Bear is the strongest of the bunch. and I'm happy with us taking Esper. What I can assume is going to happen is we might get rid of the rest of the Seraphim. There's no real point in, well, actually, if we have a satellite, we should be able to control them. So if they stay in the bubble and we have a satellite with us, they might be useful. There's a good chance that the Gorosei might issue a command in which everyone but Esper responds. We'll have to see how that works. But I think this confirms that we are getting Esper to go with Bonnie. Now, because Peter is sucking up the ship, they can't make any motion, but Luffy just goes over and punches him in the face because it's you, Peter. The worst Gorosei. He somehow ended up worse than Saturn. I don't know how that happened, but he is just a disappointment as far as Gorosei go. I really hope he's like the smartest of the bunch, and that outside of this, like when he's in the Elder Star room, that's when he shines. Because this right here ain't it. Mercury also comes in. He's trying to charge the ship itself, and he's about to he's got a full dive into the water towards the ship. So he doesn't seem worried about the idea of water negating devil fruits, and we still don't know exactly how they operate. I personally don't think it's a straight up devil fruit. I think it's more to it than that, which may be the reason why we don't have the water weakness. Because I mean, that's what they're experimenting on, is that they're trying to find a way to utilize the fruit's power without necessarily negative drawbacks. So without it, being a one-time use, without it having the water weakness, they just want straight up the power itself. It could be an element of that. I think we're going to get some more insight on that within the next 2 chapters because of what the Iron Giant does, and the fact that it punches Mercury in the face, breaks his tusk, and Mercury even has like whited eyes, so it looks like this does a significant amount of damage. Is it going to last? Will he just regenerate? Those are the questions we're going to be waiting for because we're on break. But this is also where we get the name drop for what the Iron Giant's name is, which is Emeth. Now, there's a slight conversation between Joy Boy and Emeth in which Joy Boy says the time is at hand. And it seems like Emeth just doesn't know what's going on. Because Emeth is just like, what do you mean the time? What does that mean? And I think last chapter we got the asterisk that the Iron Giant spoke in a manner similar to a child. Like they're young mentally. So I'm wondering if the Iron Giant's like pseudo sentience is that of a child. I think that could make sense as to why it kind of operates and moves the way that it does. And obviously Luffy loves it because it's a robot. I would love to see some Frankie interaction with this. I desperately need some Frankie interaction with this. I want Frankie to leave here with something. I want him to leave here with something. I need it. Because this is Frankie's island. If he doesn't leave anything, I'm going to be very disappointed. But that is the entire chapter. We're on break. Like I said, this chapter felt like something was missing. I don't think there was anything that was necessarily bad. It just felt like I didn't get everything I normally get out of a chapter. I think we should highlight the fact that Bonnie only stayed in Gear 5 for a chapter. So like everyone who's completely upset about it and just blew it out of proportion, I think they kind of got their one up. And this is exactly what I was talking about, where it's chapter to chapter. Chapter 11, 18, everyone's insanely upset about this choice that Bonnie is now the strongest character in the series. 11, 19 drops and she can only hold it for 1 attack. Like, it's so typical of the fandom to do, and it's really funny to watch every time because people they take stuff and run with it. And I mean, I'm not excused from that, and I think that's a pretty normal thing to do, especially with the way One Piece reaches across so many different, networks. It's gonna happen. It's bound to happen. But I guess reading it for so long, it's fun to see how fast people react to certain things. It really is. But yeah, we're gonna see what happens next chapter. I want to see some more Seraphim stuff. I think a couple, either last video or one before, I mentioned that Egghead's probably got a couple chapters left. I think it's going to be a little bit more than I anticipated, but not by a lot. We're leaving Egghead here real soon. Now it's possible that we get split up because we still don't have the Sunny here. And actually, that's about, they could have Lilith go with part of the crew and then Atlas go with part of the crew. That would be interesting. But we will be leaving for Elbaf very, very shortly. On to the other topics. We're gonna start with JJK because I think My Hero is a bigger topic. JJK. As of now, the latest chapter hasn't dropped. We're still on 262. 263 hasn't dropped yet. I don't know. I was surprised because My Hero and JJK were on a really long break, and I don't keep up with when they're on breaks or their schedule. So I was like, geez, I haven't read any of these chapters in a long time. But My Hero came out today, and I expect JJK to come out today unless there's a specific reason why it hasn't come out. I expect it to come out today, or at least maybe tomorrow. Soon. But JJK. So we've been in this portion of JJK for, let me see, what is this? Is this 34? 34 chapters of this very specific fight. And when it started, with everything that was going on, it felt fun and new and fresh. I will say that Sukuna versus Gojo is crazy good. It's hype. It's a good point of the series. Everything after that is slowly becoming tiring and disappointing. I don't want to see Yuji land 20 black flashes, and it feels like nothing's happened. Like we have Yuji, we have Yuta, we have Maki, we have all these characters here throwing hands, and it's like Sukuna's still winning, to the point where we have to have Yuta take over Gojo because we just need Gojo. It's like, well, why did we kill Gojo just to bring him back in the end and have him just be Yuta Gojuda? Like, why? I think it's okay. I mean, I don't absolutely hate it. I knew that we were gonna need something like this. I was like, reading through this, watching how Gojo did versus Sukuna, and then watching how everyone else did, I was like, this is not enough. You guys are not strong enough. The only way you guys win is if Yuji gets some absolutely insane specific power-up that just counters Sukuna immediately. And if that happens, that's garbage. I don't like Yuji. Yuji is a very blah character to me. So the chapter is focused on him kind of just gaining power. Don't really do it for me. I think that is a bias just because I don't like the character, but it feels underwhelming. Because he's always been like a punch merchant, and we wanted him to grow, but we wanted him to grow in his own way. This just feels like he's growing because of necessity and through other channels. It feels a lot like when Naruto got Sage powers. Like, Naruto spent a bunch of time and hard work building up to this character that we know and love, and then he loses, and then the god of ninja gives him god powers, and he just knows how to use them. It's like, okay, well, that took some of the heart out of it, because now he's just got these extra powers that he can use, and he's probably going to defeat the villain with them. Not interesting. So they brought Gojo back, and if if this works out the way I think it does, they kind of got to wrap it up with Gojo, with Gojuda. Otherwise, I think the series just ends with everyone dead. Because if Gojuda doesn't win, I really don't see the hope for anybody else. Unless they literally, and I don't know, I think this would be bad writing too, is if they use Gojuda to wear Sukuna down just for Yuji to have like his power up and finish him. Like that also doesn't feel good to me. I can't think of a way where this goes well unless Sukuna just wins. That's the only way I think this actually turns out interesting, is if Sukuna just wins in the end. Like, it just turns out he was the strongest and still is the strongest. And I still think that Nobara with an eye patch is going to make an appearance at some point. I dread it. I run from it. But eye patch Nobara comes all the same. But on to my hero. My hero, the beloved child. I remember when My Hero first dropped, and it was slated to be the next big thing. It was slated to be the Naruto replacement for this gen. And I kind of felt that way too. Like, not that anything can replace Naruto. That's just not a thing. But as far as like the hype and the popularity, the ability for people who don't really watch anime to get into it, the accessibility, My Hero landed in a really sweet spot, and it had a really strong start. So strong that I would say the first 2 seasons have nearly iconic things. All Might versus the Nomu is such a hype moment. And then Todoroki versus Deku. Those 2 moments by themselves give My Hero such a strong start. And I mean, My Hero is more than just the fights, it's about the characters. It introduces a really good line of characters in the early seasons. Even up to season 3, where we're still kind of like introducing the entire school and we get Mirio. That's all so good. And then season 4 happened, and it didn't have the same magic. And then the other seasons happened, and it feels like the magic kind of twinkled out a little bit. And as far as like the manga goes, it really felt like My Hero lost its sense of self when we got Vigilante Deku, Dark Deku, Batman Deku. That just felt like I was reading a different series, and it wasn't a good one. It didn't feel in character. It didn't feel like we were really progressing in the way that the manga kind of said we would. And I mean, I think that the last few chapters, it has been coming back to the old feel of My Hero. Like, the entirety of the fight versus All for Shigaraki, I think was bland. I mean, people were doing things, but at the end of the day, they all just smacked their faces against the wall that is Shigaraki, all lost, and then Deku came in and won. And it makes me feel the same way that I felt about Overhaul versus Mirio, where Mirio puts in all this work, gets his quirk taken, puts in more work, and then Deku comes in, and Deku just finishes it. It's like you took a really good character, squeezed him of all his juice, and you're like, all right, Deku, come in and finish this. And it's like for Shigaraki, you took all these characters. You took the top heroes, the top students. You just squeezed them all out, and then you let Deku finish it up. And I get it, he's the main character. Of course, he's going to land a finishing blow. But I don't think you have to sacrifice every single character to do that. I don't think, and like obviously, like not everyone died, but I mean, like even in this most recent chapter, so Endeavor's done being a hero. Mirko has like 1 limb left. Genist has like half a lung left. I don't think Bakugo can use his left hand, or at least the use of it's severely limited. Jiro got one of her ears cut off. Hawks doesn't have a quirk anymore. Like you nerfed most of the top heroes. And I think it's somewhat poetic because it's like heroing has ramifications. You know, you don't just go out there, be a hero, come back safe and sound. You take L's sometimes. Everybody took an L. And for what? Because Hero Society, honestly, right now would be the best time to be a villain. Because all the top heroes are out of commission. You don't have All Might, you don't have Endeavor, you don't have Mirko, you don't have Hawks, you don't have Deku, you don't have Gran Torino. Like, what? I think the samurai hero who was in the top 10, he retired. Like, who? Wash? Are you afraid of Wash? Like, what are you gonna do here? Be a villain. This is the perfect time. None of the students are ready. You have Bakugo and Todoroki who are the most ready. And I mean, Bakugo needs to retrain to be able to use his body like he used to. So you have like Todoroki. Todoroki is the kind of big hero from what we originally had. We would have Mirio, but it honestly feels like we've slated Mirio to be just a side character. Nothing special, nothing interesting. Mirio, Nejire, Sun Eater. Aramaki's from One Piece. Sun Eater. You have the top three. What are we doing with them? What are they gonna do? Like, based on what Aizawa was saying, Mirio should be the top hero right now. Of everyone who's left, it should be Mirio. So, and I'm not saying that Mirio couldn't, get results. Mirio isn't All Might. Mirio doesn't have the coverage to do things like All Might did. So when you have kind of like this trickle down of heroes that aren't necessarily the same caliber as the ones that came before them, because you had like a crazy lineup with All Might, Endeavor, Mirko, Hawks, Genist. Like, you had some crazy strong heroes in that lineup. I mean, you have like Present Mike, you have Aizawa. Aizawa's not a hero anymore. He doesn't have an eye or a leg. You have Present Mike who is strong, but obviously he is very unique in his skill set to where not every situation would be good for him to try and fight in. Like, you just have all these scenarios that the world should be in the place where it was when Shigaraki first woke up. When Shigaraki first woke up and he killed like a bunch of B-list heroes, like the top of that list was Midnight, and everyone broke down from that. Everyone was like, man, we're out of it. Like, Hero Society is dead. And you come to this point where it's like, it's so much worse than what it was when Shigaraki first woke up. All the top heroes are gone. The top hero from the US, Stars and Stripes, is gone. Like, we're at such a worse place than we were before. But it feels like we're supposed to have hope. Like, we're supposed to be like, okay, the world's better now. And it's like, is it? Is it really? This seems like the turning point that would make the world worse. And I mean, having 4 chapters left kind of scares me because the resolutions could basically, the ending could flop, in my opinion. I think Deku has to get his quirk back. Otherwise, what's the point? I don't want a Deku who is the greatest hero because he inspires others. I want a Deku who is the greatest hero because he is a hero, like in present time. And I mean, it would feel a lot like how Mirio did when they took his powers away, where basically, he kept the attitude and tried to encourage others, but at the same time, you could tell that, he was struggling with what he was dealing with. And we don't have 4 chapters to to really flesh out a struggle with Deku. We kind of got to get a turnaround quick. So I'm expecting the last chapter to be like an epilogue. So I'd say we have like 3 chapters of resolution that we need. This one was focused entirely on Todoroki and his family. Now, I think we get some Bakugo, Deku, Ochako kind of resolution, or at least interaction, because that's what I envision the top 3 of like the main characters to be. So we're gonna get that. We're gonna get the chapter of, I think, just Deku and Bakugo, and we're gonna get the chapter of essentially what happens with Deku and All Might. That's what we have left. If we don't get any solid resolutions, I think the ending will be very weak. But I mean, not saying anything yet. We still got those chapters, so we're gonna stick to it. It's been a crazy ride. I mean, like I said, the start of My Hero, I loved it. Obviously, it had some bumps in the middle, but I think overall as a series, it's very enjoyable. If I were to, someone's new to anime and they want to watch like a battle shonen or kind of like a basic one, I would point to My Hero. Like it does what it needs to do in that type of series. As far as like it being a replacement for what Naruto was, I think unfortunately it kind of lost that steam. And I mean, we have JJK out here now doing things, which honestly, it is what it is. Demon Slayer's out here doing things. I've mentioned it before. I think Demon Slayer is okay. I don't think the story is anything to write home about. I think the hype between the anime is what really gives it its shine. I think the art for the manga is awful, but here and there. All in all, I enjoyed my Hero trip. I'm excited to see where it ends. Oh, I didn't even mention Gentle. They recognized Gentle's heroic deeds. And Gentle is my 3rd favorite character in the series, behind Mirio and Momo. I love Gentle. So I'm very happy to see him get his in the end. Like that, of all the things I've been happy about for this ending, I was very happy about that. Love to see it. But let me know what y'all think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, smash that like button, ring the bell, hit the like, share, listen on Spotify, wherever you might want to listen to it. I don't know what you do with podcasts, but do that thing. And I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.